If you really want to get your head around the kind of threats we're facing today, well, look at the money, the cost. We're talking cyber attacks hitting the services we all rely on,
Hmm.
essential public services, keeping the water on, the lights, and the cost. It's hitting nearly 15 billion pounds a year for the UK economy. These aren't just like inconvenient costs, they're genuinely astronomical. So, today we're doing a deep dive into something where digital defense, well, it's basically become national security now. The UK government sees this growing danger, and they've just introduced the Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill that was November 12th, 2025. And this law, it pretty much signals the end of, let's say, hoping companies do the right thing voluntarily on cybersecurity. Okay, so let's really unpack this. Our mission here is to figure out what these new rules actually are, what's changing, and more importantly, how is this going to affect the protection of those really vital services? The NHS, water, energy, transport, protection from cyber criminals, yes, but also, crucially, state-backed threats.
Well, it's fascinating when you look at the sheer economic threat that really pushed this bill forward. It wasn't just a minor concern. I mean, we're not talking about small adjustments to budgets here. The OBR, that's the Office for Budget Responsibility, the government's independent forecaster, they estimate that just one successful attack on critical infrastructure, that could force the government to borrow an extra £30 billion, just temporarily, to deal with the immediate fallout. And put that in context, that's about 1.1% of GDP. Just gone, dealing with the aftermath. So when you layer on top the fact that the kind of background noise of cyber attacks already costs the economy nearly 15 billion, 14.7 billion to be precise every year, well, the argument for making tougher regulations mandatory, it just becomes overwhelming, doesn't it? It stops being optional. This is about keeping society running and keeping the economy stable.
And the really tricky part, the problem this bill is really trying to nail down, is how the attackers actually get in. It's often through exploiting these trusted partners, right? The gaps in the supply chain. It's not necessarily the big energy company having a weak firewall anymore. It might be the smaller, trusted tech supplier who kind of holds the keys. We've seen some pretty awful examples recently, haven't we? How do those recent incidents, especially the costs involved, really show why this bill is needed now?
Oh, absolutely. They perfectly illustrate the disaster that can happen when that trust is breached. I mean, look at the Synovus incident that hit the NHS. That one attack caused over 11,000 appointments and procedures to be disrupted. 11,000. And the estimated cost just for that single event, 32.7 million. That's a massive financial hit straight away. But the disruption to people's lives, their health, that's arguably worse. And then remember the Ministry of Defense payroll system breach back in 2024. How did the attackers get access there? It was through a third-party supplier, managed service provider, an MSP. So the bill tackles this directly because the government's basically saying, okay, outsourcing critical functions creates a vulnerability, and we need to regulate that specific risk.
Right. So if these MSPs are a key vulnerability, what's the bill actually doing to close that gap? How does it work?
Well, it brings in two really significant new areas of regulation, and both are aimed squarely at those supply chain weak points. First, like you mentioned, regulating the managed service providers themselves. So we're talking about the medium and large companies that provide IT management, maybe help desk support, or even outsource cybersecurity services to critical organizations.
Yeah.
Because these MSPs often have deep privilege access, sometimes across hundreds of different client networks, they're now going to have clear, legally binding security duties. And, this is really important, they have to report significant cyber incidents quickly, both to the government and, crucially, to their affected customers.
Okay, that customer notification part sounds vital. If the MSP gets hit, the NHS Trust or the train operator using them needs to know instantly, right? So they can protect themselves.
Precisely. That prompt notification is designed to close that dangerous delay. Otherwise, the customer, the NHS Trust, or whoever could be completely unaware they're exposed for, say, 48 hours while the attack spreads. That maximizes the potential damage. So that's the MSPs. The second layer of this new regulation tackles specific, vital components through designating what they call critical suppliers.
Critical suppliers. Okay, that sounds pretty serious. How does a company get labeled as one? Is it just about how big they are?
No, not really about size at all. It's about the impact if their specific service or product fails. So regulators get new powers to designate a supplier. Think about maybe the company that provides really specialized diagnostic software to the NHS,
Mhm.
or the firm that supplies the exact chemicals needed to make our drinking water safe. If their systems go down or their product is compromised, does that cause a major knock-on effect? Do the lights go out? Does the water stop? If yes, they can be designated. And if they are designated, they then have to meet certain minimum security requirements themselves. It's all about securing that entire chain.
Okay, so new rules for the supply chain. But if the rules are getting tougher, I guess the enforcement has to get tougher too. It can't just be about MSPs and suppliers. The government needs to show it really means business across the board, right? That's
This
fair.
brings us to enforcement, yeah. And it looks like there's a big shift here. You mentioned tougher penalties based on turnover. That sounds like a pretty major change.
It is, yeah. It's about changing the financial calculation. They're trying to remove any incentive to just, risk it and hope for the best. The idea is simple. The penalty for a serious security failure for not protecting these essential services properly will now be linked to the company's overall size, its turnover. It ensures that cutting corners on security just isn't the cheaper option anymore. It makes protecting taxpayer-funded or essential services the clear financial priority. That incentive to slack off. Hopefully gone. But it's not just about the fines, is it? There seems to be an even more direct power being introduced here, this direct intervention mechanism. The bill gives the Technology Secretary, Liz Kendall, right now the power to actually order regulators and even the organizations themselves, like an NHS trust or a water company, to take specific actions if national security is threatened. Wow, okay, that does sound like a big step. Moving from oversight to potentially, direct operational commands during a crisis, how is industry likely to react to that level of direct government control?
It's definitely a significant increase in government power. And yes, it has certainly made some people sit up and take notice. I think it really underlines just how seriously the government is taking this. They see major cyber attacks not just as IT issues, but as immediate threats to national security. So the secretary could theoretically step in and say, you need to urgently increase monitoring on these specific systems, or even, you must isolate this part of your network right now to contain the threat and keep the core service running. And while it's a strong power, the justification given is, well, speed and necessity. If there's a major fast-moving attack happening across multiple sectors, waiting for a big utility company to go through its usual internal approval processes might just be too slow. This power allows for immediate mandated action to try and prevent a truly catastrophic failure at a national level.
That makes sense. The urgency definitely reflects how fast these threats move now. And it seems the definition of critical infrastructure itself is expanding too. You mentioned some new sectors being pulled into scope.
Yes, they're definitely broadening the definition to match how our economy and society actually work today. Two areas really jump out. First, data centers. I mean, think about it. They underpin so much now. Patient records, financial payments, email systems, even the development of AI. It all runs on data centers. So they're now going to be required to meet these robust cybersecurity standards too. Because if a major data center is hit, the effects ripple outwards, hitting loads of different critical services all at once. So bringing them under the regulations is really about protecting the UK's entire digital backbone.
Right, that makes total sense. And the second area you mentioned, that one sounds like it affects people more directly, maybe in their homes. Smart energy appliances. Okay, wait, when you talk about bringing smart appliances into scope, like EV chargers people have at home or smart thermostats, that feels like a big shift. We're going from protecting, say, the power station down to devices in people's garages. Why the need for that now?
It really comes down to energy security and the stability of the national grid. As the UK shifts more towards renewables and decentralized energy sources, managing all these smart devices becomes absolutely critical. So these new safeguards, they'll cover the organizations that manage the flow of electricity and data to things like EV charge points or smart electric heating systems. It's about reducing the risk that thousands of these devices could be manipulated simultaneously in an attack. Imagine causing a huge power surge or drain, and generally strengthening the resilience of the whole UK energy system. A coordinated attack on EV chargers alone could cause real instability.
Okay, so wider scope, tougher rules, and hand in hand with that must be faster reaction times. You mentioned new rules around incident reporting, tighter deadlines.
Right.
So organizations covered by this bill, they now have to report significant cyber incidents much faster to their regulator and also to the NCSC, the National Cybersecurity Center. And the deadline is pretty tight, isn't it? 24 hours.
Yeah, 24 hours for that initial notification, just to raise the flag, say something's happened, and give an early idea of the potential impact. Then a more detailed report has to be submitted within 72 hours. This rapid reporting is vital. It helps the NCSC build up a much quicker, near real-time picture of the threats hitting the UK, which means they can potentially warn other sectors that might be vulnerable to the same attack. And, going back to those MSPs and data centers, if they get hit by a major attack, they also have a duty to notify any customers who are likely affected, and they have to do it promptly. Again, it's all about closing that time gap, giving those downstream organizations that NHS trusts, the water company, the chance to react quickly and defend their own systems before it's too late.
So bringing all this together, what's the feeling from industry? You'd expect maybe some pushback on more regulation, but it sounds like this is being seen as, well, necessary, perhaps even overdue.
I think that's fair to say yes. The general reaction seems quite positive, actually. Many industry leaders seem to recognize that the old, mostly voluntary system just wasn't cutting it anymore against modern threats. Dr. Richard Horn, who heads up the NCSC, was very clear. He called the bill a crucial step in better protecting our most critical services. That's strong endorsement. And you're also hearing supportive noises from sectors that already had pretty strong standards, but maybe less mandatory enforcement, like the UK Civil Aviation Authority. They've noted that the bill will help lift cyber defenses across the board, which is obviously essential for maintaining flight safety. It suggests that having clear, mandatory standards helps everyone improve. It raises the baseline for all.
And the really forward-thinking companies, the tech leaders, they must see that regulation has to evolve quickly now, right?
Yeah.
Especially with AI changing the game constantly. We heard from people at Cisco and Darktrace. How does the rise of AI make these new supply chain rules even more critical?
Oh, AI is a complete game changer here. It acts as a massive accelerator for attackers. Think about it. AI can automate the whole process of scanning for weaknesses, identifying vulnerabilities across thousands of potential targets, like all those MSPs and their clients, in, well, potentially hours instead of weeks or months. That means the kind of supply chain defenses that might have been okay a couple of years ago. They're rapidly becoming outdated because the attacks can come so much faster and be much more targeted. And AI can also generate highly convincing, personalized phishing emails or probe for those unknown zero-day vulnerabilities much more effectively. So you absolutely need a regulatory framework that forces organizations to adopt faster, more integrated, more responsive defenses. This bill, especially with its focus on quick reporting and mandatory baseline standards, feels like an essential move to try and keep the regulatory environment somewhat in step with these rapidly evolving AI-powered threats.
And when you strip it all back, the ultimate goal here isn't just about compliance or tech. It's about real-world impact, isn't it? It's about preventing disruption. It means, hopefully, fewer canceled NHS appointments because systems are down, less chaos on the transport network, a quicker join-up national response when something bad does happen. And it's probably worth remembering the wider context, too. This isn't happening in a vacuum. The UK's own cybersecurity industry is pretty strong, already adding something like 13.2 billion to the economy. This kind of regulation arguably helps foster that expertise too.
Exactly. So what does all this mean for you listening and, well, for the UK as a whole? This cybersecurity and resilience bill, it really marks a major shift, a step change in how the government is trying to protect all of us in what's clearly an increasingly dangerous digital world. It signals quite clearly the end of relying purely on voluntary guidance for the most critical sectors. We're moving to mandatory, detailed standards with real consequences, those turnover-based fines, and even the possibility of direct government intervention in a crisis. It's all designed ultimately for greater economic stability and, fundamentally, national security.
It definitely raises the bar, the mandatory minimum standard for those essential services. But maybe let's end with a thought for you to take away, something to chew on. The Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, they made the point that really boosting national cybersecurity isn't just about individual organizations being strong. It requires building collective resilience. Now, couple that with research from Cisco suggesting only about 8% of UK organizations currently rate themselves as mature in their cybersecurity readiness, just 8%. So the question maybe isn't just about how the organizations directly covered by this new law will comply. The bigger question perhaps is, how do we build that wider collective resilience? How do we encourage and enable all sorts of organizations, even those not directly regulated yet, to get better and lift that 8% figure significantly? That's something for you to maybe mull over or explore further.
Yeah, a really important point. This has been a fascinating deep dive into what's clearly a top priority for national defense now.
Absolutely. And look, if you're listening and thinking about how to apply some of this, how to improve your own organization's defenses, whether you're covered by the bill or not, remember the NCSC, the National Cybersecurity Center, offers loads of free, really practical guidance and tools, things like the Cyber Essentials Scheme. It's designed to help any organization, big or small, get the basics right and improve their resilience. Definitely worth checking out. Don't wait to be told. The time to act is always now.